They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio
Man, oh man.
with Paul Harrell
There we go.
is on now.
Welcome, folks. Welcome. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, you found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine. My name is Paul, and I am glad and thankful and grateful that you are listening, that you are with us today. I was just going over a story. We're going to talk more about this at 7:33 when we talk to Family Counsel's Luke McCoy. This is a headline here from the Daily Wire. Jury rules against Texas dad fighting 7-year-old son's gender transition. His mom and, I guess his mom married a female doctor, and they believe they've got twin boys from this other marriage, and they're trying to make one of them a woman. And they've renamed him Luna. And a jury, 11 of the 12 jurors said he doesn't get sole custody. She said she's not going to give him the hormone blockers until maybe around 11. And the dad sitting there lamenting on he's talked to other shows saying, imagine you get to FaceTime with your son and your wife has dressed him up in a dress with false eyelashes and makeup and lipstick. And now the court's saying that he can't have sole custody. What do you do if you're that father? What do you actually do? Seriously. You talk about desperate times. You talk about the United States of America sanctioning child abuse, arguably sexual abuse, which I would say that it is, sexually abusing a child and affirming that. What would you do if you were that father? End of your rope doesn't even begin to describe what this father must be feeling. A telephone number this morning, 870-275-9799. We will talk more about this later in the program. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, we're going to be talking with Dr. Bruce L. Hartman, author of a new book out called Your Faith Has Made You Well, a radical new way to create peace and hope. We're going to talk about how, according to polls, the share of people who identify as Christians in America has dropped sharply. We also have a good satire article from the Babylon Bee saying that politics is now the nation's fastest growing religion. So we're excited about that. Also, again, 7:33, Luke McCoy from Family Counsel. We're going to talk about this court ruling. Headline, Federal Court Strikes Down Obama Administration's Transgender Mandate for Doctors. We'll talk about conscience, rights of protections, rights of conscience that need to be protected here in Arkansas moving forward when it comes to medical professionals being forced to do non-emergency procedures against their conscience or their faith. We'll talk about that. Now, let's before we do, though, I want to start with Mitt Romney, because I tweeted about this. Those of you that follow me on Twitter, at Paul Harrell 1776, also follow Conduit News, at Conduit News. This is pretty interesting, but this says really everything you need to know about Mitt Romney. I think Newt Gingrich is right when he says Mitt Romney's now representing a fossilized version of the Republican Party. Mitt Romney with his high standards, Mitt Romney with his public persona is really just a fraud. I mean, he really is. Somebody who's obsessed with what other people think of him. Someone who doesn't want to actually say his honest opinion, wants to play the typical political game. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about the fact, yes, we know Mitt Romney's against Trump. And we know he said some things publicly. But not near what he has said or endorsed or how he stood up for himself under a fake Twitter account with the name Pierre Delecto. Pierre Delecto. That's Mitt Romney. Now, that's kind of weird. Remember when Anthony Weiner, the sexting minor guy, Anthony Weiner, former congressman, his name was Carlos Danger. That was his false name. Mitt Romney caught with secret Twitter account, Pierre Delecto. That's kind of a creepy name. I'm just saying, it's creepy. So, listen to this. This is from John Nolte. Senator Mitt Romney has been caught using the pseudonym Pierre Delecto to defend his own honor on Twitter. Everything about this story says so much about Mitt Romney. His pettiness, his insecurity, definitely insecurity. His lack of character, honesty, decency, starting with how it all unraveled. Romney doing business with the establishment media, in this case, the far-left publication known as The Atlantic. Activist reporter McKay Coppins, who, by the way, McKay Coppins was originally hired at BuzzFeed to attack Mitt Romney when he was running for president in 2012, trying to claim that Mitt Romney was essentially trying to start a race war. He had welfare reform proposals. Remember that? And remember the 47% comment? 47% of Americans don't pay taxes. How are they ever going to vote for somebody that wants to, broaden the tax base? Back during the 2012 election, there was a lot of talk about skin in the game and that sort of thing. So anyway, The Atlantic is interviewing this guy, Mitt Romney, Mittens, as he's being affectionately referred to by conservatives. And like an abused spouse, Romney continues to cuddle up to his media abusers, people who treated him much worse than Trump ever has. It's a clinical condition known as McCain syndrome, and there's no known cure. And so, because there is a God, and he loves us, Romney's cuddling with his abuser on the pages of The Atlantic has ended in total humiliation after he attempted to brag about his social media savvy. Again, this piece by John Nolte over at Breitbart.com. I tweeted it out on my Twitter page. Quote, when I met Romney in his office a couple of weeks later, I asked if Trump's Twitter insults bothered him. This is Romney's response. That's kind of what he does, Romney said. He explained that he uses a secret Twitter account. What do they call me, a lurker, to keep tabs on the political conversation? I won't give you the name of it, he said. I'm following 668 people. Well, that was all it took, folks, for people to figure out which lurker account it was. And it was Pierre Delecto. So now people get to go back and they get to look at all of the things Pierre Delecto, a.k.a. Mitt Romney, Mittens, has done on Twitter under this account. And it's pretty funny. The internet's forever. Now, I think he's since made this Twitter account private, but just read some of this stuff. You had a reporter, Stephen Dennis, tweeting out, GOP senators sticking up for Richard Burr, Blunt, Shelby, Collins, Rubio. Pierre Delecto responds, Romney, too, said to the Washington Post that he has confidence in Chairman Burr, making sure he gets the positive press. Now, that is just petty and insecure, isn't it? When Mitt Romney discovers his numero uno shrieking fangirl is disappointed in Mitt Romney is there to stand tall for Mitt Romney. Jennifer Rubin from the Washington Post, inside Romney's Trump strategy. His strategy is non-confrontation, verging on spinelessness. Pierre Delecto responds, Jennifer, you need to take a breath. Maybe you can then acknowledge the people who agree with you in large measure, even if not in every measure. Gosh darn it, Mitt Romney does, too, have a moral compass. Soledad O'Brien. Remember Soledad O'Brien, the radical leftist? Utter lack of moral compass, she said of Mitt Romney. Pierre Delecto, a.k.a. Mitt Romney, responded on Twitter, only Republican to hit Trump on Mueller report. Only one to hit Trump on character time and again. So, Soledad, you think he's the one without moral compass? Question mark. This definitely shows Mitt Romney is one insecure politician. Trying to get the mainstream media, by the way, to affirm him, which if you really know anything about the media, they only do that to Republicans when Republicans are useful at trashing their own party. Britt Hume, some might say Romney is too. Responding to a Daily Caller tweet, Romney says America is an unreliable ally after Trump pulls out of Syria. Pierre Delecto, loyal to principle, Trump's loyalty to party or person. Right, Britt? So let me just tell you how this sums up everything wrong with politics today. Because this was part of this was my original thought. And I don't know if the president has a fake Twitter account, but I'm going to assume, I don't know why he would need one, okay? The president tells you what he thinks time and time again, okay? The president criticizes the media publicly. He calls them fake news. The fake news is the enemy of the American people. He says this time and time again. He doesn't lurk in the shadows and create a fake Twitter account to try to stand up for himself. And in my opinion, this really verifies everything I've been saying about why Trump has such an appeal to the average voter. Because you know where he stands. You may disagree with it. You may not have put it that way or whatever. But you know where the president of the United States stands. And these politicians, one of the reasons that Mitt Romney hates President Trump is because he is being so real. And Trump doesn't use decency or a cloak of decency to deceive a populace. And I think Mitt Romney and others like him do. They use it. They are not the same people in front of you as they are behind closed doors. And I know that's true in some degree for all of us. But I have said for a long time, one of the reasons that President Trump is so hated is because the politicians that hate him are just like he is, but they're just not like he is publicly. What I mean by that is the president is just willing to be, to have a normal conversation, to say the things that all of us might say to each other, but maybe you wouldn't say publicly, because we have the totalitarian speech police that have made our society less free and have made Americans walk on eggshells amongst each other. That's not to say that you say something purposely to hurt somebody, but there's so many people out there that we've used this idea of politeness and decency, and it's actually making us not be honest with one another. So I think that's why President Trump has been so successful, and Mitt Romney here is proving the point. Mitt Romney doesn't criticize the media, not to their face, not as Mitt Romney. He creates a fake Twitter account to do it. And that right there, folks, is why they hate him. Speaking of President Trump, let's go to this Twitter video. Last night he did a one-on-one sit-down with Sean Hannity. This was what I thought the most interesting moment of the interview was. Go ahead.
I want to show you this, and I'll put it up on our screen for our people at home. Ukrainian efforts to sabotage Trump backfire. This was January 11, 2017.
Yep.
You weren't inaugurated yet.
Yep.
This article talks about how Ukraine worked with Hillary to influence the elections. They give chapter and verse on how they did it. Now, don't you, as the president, do you feel if there was foreign interference in an election? We spent 2.5 years hearing about Trump-Russia collusion. They ignore the dossier, and Ukraine admitting that they helped Hillary.
Well, the dossier was a disgrace. The dossier was totally fake, and now it's been proven to be fake. People know how that was done. I mean, you have a track record now. You know as well as everybody knows. I guess they're doing an investigation, but I think before you even do the investigation, so they do a fake dossier on me. They tried to release it before the election to affect the election. I don't know how they didn't. I tell you, it's probably the only thing I respect about the press is they refused to put it in before the election because it could have had a little impact. Maybe it could have had more than a little impact. So they do a fake dossier that was probably meant to get out. I mean, I think definitely meant to get out before the election so that they could affect the election. And look at the people that wrote it. And look at where they came from. And look at the wife of the man that works, I won't even mention names, at the Department of Justice. And she's on the payroll of the company that Robert Mueller never heard of during his testimony.
Fusion GPS.
Think of it. Never heard of the company.
All right, stop. So that was
said,
the most interesting
Fusion.
part. I just want to remind everybody. I mean, there's actually a guy in jail right now who was convicted in a Ukrainian court for helping Hillary Clinton in the campaign there in the 2016 election. And while we were talking about Russia collusion and a foreign election interference, during the Mueller investigation, there were headlines across the Ukraine about convicting this guy, and we heard nothing about it. Then there was the Politico piece. Well, before that happened, there's the Politico piece. January 11th, 2017, before the president's even inaugurated and sworn in, detailing what went on in the Ukraine. And the next question you have to ask is this. So is it a coincidence that the president calls and asks for a favor for them to look into the 2016 election and CrowdStrike and the servers? That is what sparks impeachment. Now, they say, no, it was Joe Biden. He asked a favor for Joe Biden, which is a complete lie. You have to omit 540 words in the transcript to get to that conclusion. But I think what's really going on here is that CIA heard this conversation, or heard of the conversation, and one of the CIA whistleblowers we know worked with Joe Biden when he was vice president, might have even been in the Ukraine when Joe Biden was over in the Ukraine. That's what this is about. This is about them looking into the 2016 election. It's not about the 2020 election. And that's why they've drummed up this whole phony impeachment. And again, the CIA is doing what the FBI failed to do with the whole Russia collusion in the first place. It's very, very frustrating. Very frustrating. You know, ladies and gentlemen, as a taxpayer, by the way, did you guys see this headline? We're going to talk about this next hour. Also, we're going to talk about Pope County Casino. But did you see this over at Talk Business and Politics? This was fascinating. A headline: group pushes combined reporting for tax fairness. Governor disagrees. I'll give you that story because I have a unique take on that story. It has to do with the corporate the corporate tax cut, along with the internet sales tax hike, the piece of legislation that went into effect July 1st. I'll give you that take coming up later in the hour. But anyway, as a taxpayer or business owner, you guys know the government rarely gives you a break, right? They're raising your taxes. They raise your taxes internet, maybe they cut them here. It's a net tax increase, though. That's what I'm going to be talking to Arkansas County Republicans about tonight. But you know it, big government politicians, they always want more of your money. So if you want to support the work that I'm doing here, that we're doing here at Conduit News, we bring you the truth, then I want to encourage you to consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us, but by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. I want you to go to conduitforcommerce.org. I want you to click the Support Our Cause button right there at the top of the page. And from there, you can donate monthly. You can give one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org, and click Support Our Cause. Folks, we're going to take a break. 1 minute. Be back here in just a second. He's the co-founder and executive director of the City of Hope Outreach, which is a 501c3 nonprofit in Conway, Arkansas. The mission is to provoke hope in individuals, families, and communities. His name is Dr. Philip Fletcher. He joins us now, calling in from Conway. Dr. Fletcher, great to meet you, have you on the program for the first time, sir.
Hey, thank you, Paul. Good to be here.
So the reason I'm having you on is because you're going to be in Jonesboro speaking at this Quest for Quality Life coming up tomorrow. It's hosted by Dan Sullivan, 6:30 to 8, First National Bank Community Room. Let me ask you this. What do you hope to accomplish at this event?
Well, you know, I'm the outsider coming to Jonesboro, and I hope to provide just a perspective on what quality of life looks like for Arkansans in general, and just bringing some of the lessons that I've learned and the work that I have done and my organization has done, City of Hope Outreach here in Conway.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, putting the men back in menstrual always removes female symbol from pads after transgenders complain. From the D.C. Clothesline. Yes, I know. Very, very strange story, but it's certainly just another sign of how crazy our society is, how we're obsessed with sex. So Always, the maker of feminine products, has put the men back into menstrual by removing sexist symbols from their sanitary pad packaging. Men across the world can now feel much easier since these pads are now inclusive of all sexes, not just the traditional male and female of the olden days. That's so ridiculous. Here's another report from RT, which I think is that Russia Today. Women's products maker Always is at the center of a fresh feminist versus transgender skirmish after caving into trans activists' outrage and removing the discriminatory Venus symbol from its packaging. The company will drop the universally recognized symbol from December, following an onslaught of tweets insisting that women aren't the only ones who menstruate. So, not to gross everyone out this morning. Hey, but listen, can you even say that, right? Because there's a whole movement now about period poverty. You've heard about this, period poverty? Well, they're trying to say that there are women that don't have access to feminine products. I actually think it's different than that. I think period poverty is not really about access to feminine hygiene products. I think it's goes right in line with this transgender movement. People who are really just genuinely upset that they're not in control of every aspect of their lives. I wasn't able to choose that I'm a male, okay? I wasn't able to choose a lot of things. I'm not in control of a lot of circumstances that I'm placed into, right? I am not in control. I am not in 100% control of my life and my circumstances. Nobody is. And to me, I think there are people that are upset. Oh, it would be great if we were, right? Yeah, because then I could just worship myself. And that's really what this is. This is just the quest to try to worship yourself, and people who are upset that they were created the way they were, that they weren't given a say about what mods and upgrades they wanted, you know, and that's what this is really about. This is about being hostile toward the Creator. And I mean, we all fight for more control than we need every single day. In all circumstances. But I just think this trans argument is people that are like, I'm just upset that I was created the way I was. And so now I'm going to change it. I'm going to define my own reality. And that's why we have a movement that is saying, I'm going to essentially choose my gender because that's a piece of software. Gender is just software. Male, female is just software when it's absolutely not. It is a chromosome. It is the hardware that you're born with. And you may not like the circumstances you're born with. Join the club. That happens to people all the time, not necessarily the male or female, but on all kinds of circumstances that you're not in control of. You were not consulted. Guess what? You're not God. You were not consulted when you were created. And we have people, and you know what? We're not the first people to have a problem getting over that. But I feel like this is kind of the first foray into trying to define your own reality and making other people accept your delusions. Telephone number 870-275-9799. I didn't get to the rest of these stories that I was going to cover. You have to forgive me. When we come back, though, we're going to be talking with Dr. Bruce Hartman in his new book, so you definitely want to stay tuned for that. There is this survey right here. Hang on a second. Is that where it is? Yeah. Now, here it is. The share of Christians in America dropping sharply, according to polls. So we'll talk about that, much, much more when we come back. Don't go anywhere.
The last 12 years, and even more specifically, addressing quality of life. What does it look like for all people in a given area. Quality of life is going to look different for people because a host of different reasons. Obviously, people are free to choose what it is that they want to do in life. People have different goals in life, different educational backgrounds, so on and so forth. So, that ultimately, those factors contribute to the outcome for people's quality of life. But at the end of the day, a quality of life for an individual or for a community or a city or even a state is really the maximum amount of people who freely have chosen to live how they want to live.
Yeah.
Obviously, without impacting other people, not harming them. But then people are benefiting and helping one another, organizing together freely. Because you're going to always have in any given situation some that have a lot, some that have some, and some that have little. And so how can those individuals, even sitting around at the same table, provide their voice to affect their situation? So that's what I hope to bring to the table tomorrow night.
So I'm reading your resume right here.
Yes, sir.
You have Bachelor's of Arts in Ethnic Studies from the University of California at Riverside, Master's of Arts in Theology and Apologetics from Liberty University. I like that one. That's my favorite one. And a doctorate in organizational leadership from Regent University. What's your, beyond that background, what is your story? When did you know you wanted to do something like the City of Hope outreach?
Yeah, so born in Louisville, Kentucky, moved to California when I was 10. My dad got a job promotion, so we moved out there. Graduated from college, met my beautiful wife, Nicole. We've been married going on 22 years in December. And we have 3 kids, a son at Henderson State, a daughter at a junior college in Morrilton, about to have another daughter graduate high school. And so that's my family. In California, after we got married, I joined the military because we needed to do something different. It was getting expensive in California. So this is back in 1998. It was expensive. So you follow anything that's going on with California, it's even more expensive now.
Mm-hmm.
So joined the military, entered as a enlisted 92 Yankee, and then got my commission as a armor officer or a tanker, and spent the rest of my years deployed overseas, Korea, served in OIF-3, Iraq, and then when I got back to go to what was we call the Command Corps.
Everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Thanks so much for being with us. Folks, he's the author of a new book, Your Faith Has Made You Well, A Radical New Way to Create Peace and Hope. His name's Dr. Bruce L. Hartman. Dr. Hartman, welcome to the program, sir.
Yeah, thank you for having me today, Paul.
Absolutely. Glad that you could do it. So first of all, let's talk about the book. It was out, I guess, back on September 3rd of this year. So what motivated you to write this?
You know, one of the things that I've noticed particularly amongst people that I talk to and my Twitter followers and, just people in general, is that we've kind of turned our belief into God as a genie. So in other words, if we pray, God will answer. But Jesus says in the Gospels 8 times, your faith has made you well. So what I did was I researched that, and then I started talking to folks who had had significant improvements in their life. Either they were near death in a hospital bed, or they were dealing with the death of a child, or some other issue. What I discovered from talking to these folks is almost every person, when they tell you their story, they tell you about their prayers and their faith in God and how they worked with God as opposed to just leaving it completely up to God. Now, we're always told, give it to God and go away or be still. But there has to be faith, and there has to be a constant mutual relationship with God to really experience all the benefits of having faith. And that's why I wrote the book, and it contains the stories of dozens of people who, using their faith, significantly changed their life and made life better for them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like how this is on Amazon. If you go to Amazon.com, kind of a summary here. The first sentence, your faith has made you well, provides a radical way to use faith as a guidepost when standing at the inevitable crossroads of life where despair abounds. And that is true. I mean, that's the reality of the world we live in, you know?
Oh, yes, and if you haven't had a crisis in your life, you're overdue. And so, I don't mean to be too glib about that, but this is a book that helps you in those times. You know, you're waiting for an answer about a job, or you're waiting for a prognosis about your illness. You're waiting for an issue to be resolved financially. And this isn't a prosperity gospel, but the book is instructive in terms of helping folks through the eyes of other people and through the words of the gospel, how to deal with that and how to understand the will of God. Because God will give us what God feels that we need, not what we want. And sometimes the two match, and God bless those that happens. But other times, you know, these valleys of despair are really times of preparation. And having this relationship with God really changes your perspective on what the will of God is.
Yeah, man, that's really good. That's very well said. I want to talk to you about this poll that I saw, and there's a few headlines out there about it. Share of Christians in America dropping sharply. Is this true? What do you think?
I do think, and I think I'm going to give you some hope, and I'm going to give you the three reasons why. One is we have this millennium bubble that's going through our society right now. And when I say a bubble, there's a group of people that are almost 50% larger than the generation before them. And some people refer it to as the echo boom for baby boomers, but we call them millennials. Historically, and this happens for all of us, you know, when you're in your 20s and 30s, this isn't the time that you go to church. So that's pressing the number down somewhat. The second thing is the millennials, they don't go to the Methodist church. Some will go to the Catholic church. They don't go to the organized church. What they do is they go to the non-denominational churches, who don't necessarily report as well as, say, the denominations do. And I don't mean that they're inferior. It's just that they're not plugged into statistics. So we have that as well. So the only denomination that's growing right now is actually the non-denomination. That's the second thing. Third thing is we as a generation did a bad job involving children in church when they were young. Now, many parents will say, no, I took them to church. Yes, but when they got to church, where did they go? They went to a room. Yeah. Either the high school room or the junior high school room or the fifth grade Sunday school class. And, you know, when I talk to a lot of pastors, they all say, well, the children are, you know, the youth are part of the future. No, the youth are there in church today and should participate in church. We should hear their voice. We should let them read the prayer. We should let them help pick the song so that they feel invested in it. And instead, I think what we did, particularly in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, was in the 90s, we put them in these rooms away from the congregation. So the congregation looked older. And meanwhile, the children and the young adults didn't feel attached to the church. So that's the second thing. The third thing is I don't think we're doing a great job in church delivering the hard message. And the reality is we avoid the hard message, we lose people. But when we start delivering the hard messages, yes, Jesus does love you, but there is a price to pay for that love, which means we got to be kind to our neighbor, means we got to help others, means we got to turn our other cheek. That message has to be delivered as well. And I think that not doing that, you're making Christianity kind of a weak, deluded Christianity that as soon as a strong November wind blows, they'll disappear. And that's kind of what we're seeing.
Interesting. Very interesting. We're talking with Dr. Bruce L. Hartman, again, author of this new book, Your Faith Has Made You Well. We're talking about the idea that, according to polls, less people are identifying as Christians. I use that word identify. Most of the time when you hear it in the context of identifying the sex that you actually aren't. We have this satire piece back on the 25th of October last year. So I felt like this was apropos. Headline from the Babylon Bee, Politics, Now Nation's Fastest Growing Religion. I think this is true. I think in many respects, you look at a lot of issues that are on the leftist side, and even some on the right, but specifically on the left with global warming. It's almost as if there is a dogma to it, and if you don't agree with it, you're a heretic. If you don't agree, if you feel maybe uncomfortable, let's say that you are somebody who, identifies with leftist causes, but maybe you just feel a little uncomfortable if you're a woman sharing a bathroom with a man. Well, you are done. You're over. You disagree with one thing, then you're a heretic. That seems to be where we are today, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. We're about as polarized. As we've ever been in the history of this country. There's always been politics. There's always been rancor, not to this level. I'll give you an interesting statistic on how severe it is. In the 60s, 77% of America trusted their leaders. Today, it's down to 17%, and that's certainly an issue that we have to address. It's almost like those of us who are watching our leaders are like kids watching the parents fight. It's very unsettling and it's very disruptive to people. And you would think our leaders would be the ones showing us how to behave, as opposed to us showing them how to behave.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. The lack of confidence. Let me ask you this: I think that lack of confidence in our leaders, that sharp decline, is because they don't feel like they're being there's no honesty. They can kind of see right through this facade, and I think it's a lot worse than we actually know in terms of how corrupt the institutions are around us, or the people running these institutions. The institutions themselves may be fine, but it's the people running them. And I almost think, if you look back at America's founding and you look back at the theology of our founders, the men of deep faith, how they were relying on God, divine providence, to fight the most powerful military in the world, to secure religious liberty and freedom and everything else. There no question, Thomas Jefferson, this country is for a moral and religious people. And so there's no question that at one point we certainly were. It was an accepted idea that, hey, we're a Christian nation or a Judeo-Christian nation. And I feel like the decency that comes with that, the moral compass in public life, that yes, we are pushing out more and more as the years go by. But I feel like our politicians, they use that assumption of decency as a cloak, and they do it to deceive the masses. That's kind of where I fall on this.
I think every word you just said is 100% accurate. And it's this issue of morality and decency. I'll give you an example. At the time of the American Revolution, our leaders were far more religious and honorable than the masses. So only 17% of people in 1776 identified themselves as Christian, which is interesting. Most people just didn't even go to church and had other things to do on Sunday, which is, nostalgia tells us that they did go to church a lot, but they didn't. What Jefferson, Adams, and Washington did when they set up the First Amendment and the freedom of religion is they actually catapulted in two ways Christianity. One, through their own behavior, and the second thing is they allowed the freedom of expression. So you had Second Great Awakening that followed soon after the Revolution, and that's really when Christianity took off. And because of the power that was behind the Constitution, you could believe whatever you wanted to believe and be free from doing it. You didn't have to worry about government interference. And, you know, those are the two things that have kind of reversed themselves. I mean, can we really look at our religious leaders and say they our political leaders and say they're Christian, like Washington and Jefferson and Adams? We can't do that. So we have to look in our own society for those around us. And I think that's such an important dichotomy that we need to understand. We've got to go back to a government for the people and by the people.
It's absolutely the opposite. I mean, you have some people that believe, because Christianity is a worldview, that once you become a public official, that if you say anything religious about your own beliefs as a public official, that somehow is a violation of the Establishment Clause. And that's absolutely ridiculous. But, I mean, so we've gone completely the other direction.
It's not even close. We recently had two judges, two very committed Catholic judges being confirmed, and two senators attacked them because of their Catholic beliefs. And two things are wrong with that. One is that is not what is in the First Amendment. If they're Catholic, they have every right to believe in Jesus and every right to expect that their faith is important to them. But the two judges did not fight back, and I think that was wrong.
Yeah.
I think that they should have gone back to those leaders and said this is inappropriate, particularly judges who understand the law.
I agree with you, Dr. Bruce Hartman. I appreciate you coming on the program. Thank you for spending time with us this morning. Again, your book, Your Faith Has Made You Well, A Radical New Way to Create Peace and Hope. It's up at Amazon right now, and I really appreciate what you're doing, sir.
Yeah, thank you, and God bless you and your ministry as well.
Alrighty. God bless you too, sir. Folks, we're going to take a break. The telephone number 870-275-9799. If you want to contribute to the conversation, you can text or call. We're broadcasting up at facebook.com/Conduit News, as well as we're going to make a YouTube video of the segment you just heard. You can share with your friends if you like. That's at the YouTube channel, and we want you to subscribe to it, and then click the little bell to receive notifications. One of the easiest ways you can help us, right? One of the easiest ways, doesn't cost you anything, is to go subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're going to take a break. Back in just a moment. Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money.
But I had to come off active duty, so we moved to Arkansas. My in-laws live here in Conway. Moved here, so finished my seminary degree, which I did. But God had a different plan and was coming home from work in Little Rock one day and spoke to my heart to make a right on this street called Robbins. There's a trailer park back here, and the rest is history. So me, my wife, and our three kids, they were little at the time, we just did ministry every Sunday. The trailer park, pretty huge, low income, disabled persons, and we started serving the community and became a nonprofit, City of Hope Outreach. And we began doing work in 3 different communities here in Conway, and then started some work in southeast Arkansas in a city called Mitchellville outside of Dumas, and Eudora near Lake Village. And we focus strategically on education, housing, and community development. So we do after-school programs for kids. We have a home for men who are homeless. We're raising money for a housing project called Hope Village. We do some community development, a jobs program for poor and homeless guys and women, just a host of different things. And yeah, so I've been doing that for the last 12 years. Love it to death.
Wow.
Couldn't think of anything else I could do right now.
That is amazing. So you guys essentially, and that I love the story that you were driving and you felt that you needed to take a right on a certain street.
Yeah.
I just want to. I have to take this opportunity.
Let's face it, times are tough for the Arkansas General Assembly. They're all waiting for the spotlight exposing public corruption to end, so they won't be under so much scrutiny. And during this time, what if you're a legislator and you need money? What if you're slapped with a huge expense? What if your check for consultant services is late this month? Or maybe you just need extra cash now until payday. When that happens, you can't wait. Hi, I'm Bobby Blackmail for the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank, your trusted source to over 135 lenders to get you short-term cash fast. Use the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank today, and you can have up to $12,500 cash in your checking account tomorrow. Dried up bribes no longer coming from Medicaid entities? Handled. Extra cash until your hopeful acquittal? Done. And you'll be surprised at how easy it is to get extra cash. Just be an elected official and be comfortable with the status quo, and we'll connect you with a fellow legislator who is ready to loan. It's quick and easy. And don't worry if you can't make the payments, because the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank is designed to help you get through these tough economic times. There are other ways you can pay off your debt, like by voting the way the establishment wants, or by rewarding some with committee chairmanships. So forget about overdraft fees and the spirit of covetousness that sometimes overwhelms the best of lawmakers. Just remember, the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank for short-term cash between colleagues when you need it fast.
Some transactions have long-term consequences.
Paul Harrell, parody.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right. Everybody is waiting on the Inspector General report to come out. Everybody wants to know what's going on. I don't want the Inspector General report to come out. I want William Barr to declassify the FISA documents and everything concerning them before the Inspector General report comes out, because I think that right now, if the Inspector General report came out, it would be full of black lines. So William Barr needs to declass, as he's given the authority by President Trump. There are reports that the intelligence communities and the Justice Department are arguing back and forth over what is appropriate, what needs to remain secret. Senator Chuck Grassley tweeted this: all of the delays and excuses why Horowitz Inspector General FISA report isn't public yet, after several months of anticipation of its issues, leads me to the suspicion it's going to be deep six by the deep state, meaning it's not going to be that they're essentially going to cut the FBI and the intelligence community a pass, meaning the same laws that would apply to us are not going to apply to them, just like Hillary Clinton. Will that be the case? I certainly hope not. But you never know. I mean, we definitely know, the pessimistic, I think a pessimistic view of it would be appropriate at this point. Last night, Rand Paul was on Tucker Carlson, where Rand Paul was encouraging Lindsey Graham to do what he said. Lindsey Graham, being the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, needs to haul in Andrew McCabe, needs to haul in John Brennan, the former CIA director, needs to ask them these questions. And so that's another thing that could start to happen, but it hasn't happened yet. I think maybe they're waiting to see what actually comes of all of this. So we will wait and see as we get closer to this. But, I mean, you heard the president last night, if you were watching Hannity, one-on-one interview. The president said, we're investigating all this stuff, but we already know about fusing GPS. We already know about Christopher Steele. I mean, all that's out there for public consumption right now. It's just whether or not the authorities are going to do anything. I mean, if your liberties are violated, if your Fourth Amendment is violated, and there's no one person responsible for it, what do you do? But what if there is one person responsible for it? And that one person just happens to be somebody whose arrest or indictment would rock the world. What do you do then? If you take politics into consideration, you'll never do anything. China. Don't trust China. Arkansas. Don't trust China. Asa Hutchinson has a big economic development announcement in Conway. Is that today? Did I see that was today? According to, I got this email. Asa Hutchinson's going to be announcing some sort of economic development deal. We'll see what happens. Is it going to be Dubai? Is it going to be Dubai? The United Arab Emirates? Are they coming to Arkansas? Is it going to be India? We got Indian companies coming to Arkansas. Who knows? This, of course, on the heels of Asa Hutchinson's Secretary of Commerce, Mike Preston, saying that all these Chinese deals are on hold. Don't trust China. You can't, you know? Big deal that Mike Preston got asked the question about Congressman Rick Crawford and his concerns about China and these Chinese communists coming to Arkansas. Big deal. Big deal that he addressed it by giving credibility to the intelligence briefings that Rick Crawford gets that none of us get, but then dismissing them, saying we're pretty confident that the companies coming here are not a threat, which is ridiculous. It's such a stupid statement. I'm sorry, just to be candid, that's not an intelligent statement. You have to be living in a fantasy world where you define your own reality if you're going to claim that Chinese companies are just like American companies. I mean, you have to be living in a different reality if you think that if the Communist Party of China, which these heads of these companies are members of, if the Communist Party of China calls the executive and says, hey, I want information on this going on in Arkansas or whatever, you'd have to be living on another planet not to think they're going to say, absolutely, we'll spy on the Americans for you. Absolutely, we'll steal this technology. You'd have to be living on another planet. And I believe that the heads of Arkansas Economic Development, Mike Preston and Asa Hutchinson, are living on another planet when it comes to trusting the Chinese. Again, it's one thing to trade with China. It's another thing to give them our taxpayer dollars and resources for them to move here and open up 6 factories. This from the Christian perspective, Christian Broadcasting Network, rather. John, I want you to show this. War against the faithful. Chinese government tears down church building as Christians worship. As they worship. In the latest blatant attack against the church at large in communist China, Chinese government authorities tore down a mega church's building in the Funan Anhui region, starting the demolition while the congregation was worshiping. The church's pastors were also arrested and detained. The incident happened over the weekend, according to the international nonprofit Christian Human Rights Organization. This was on the 21st. Government officials did not provide any documents ordering the 3,000-seat church building's demolition, but they did produce arrest warrants for leaders of Jen Yiming and Sun Yongyao. Both pastors were detained on the charge of suspicion of gathering a crowd to disturb a social order. The church was torn down. What's even more frightening to members of the congregation is that the church is part of the communist country's official recognized church network, which also is a weird thing. This is yet another clear example showing the escalation of religious persecution today by the Chinese regime. The total disregard of religious freedoms, protection, as enshrined in the Communist Party's own constitution, tells the whole world President Xi is determined to continue his war against the peaceful Christian faithful. This campaign will surely fail in the end, because according to China Aid President Bob Fu. Reports about attacks against Christians and other religious groups have been escalating out of China in recent years, including bulldozing churches and mosques, barring Tibetan children from Buddhist religious studies, and incarcerating more than 1 million members of Islamic ethnic minorities in what are termed re-education centers, where, of course, at those re-education centers, they do forced DNA testing so that they can then put that in a database and advertise your organs to wealthy buyers around the world for your eyes, your kidneys, your liver, your lungs, and your heart. Because you're a social nuisance, and we'd like to remove you. And while we're at it, why not make $250,000, $500,000 a human? Yeah. Arkansas's 6 Communist Chinese Party deals are up in the air right now. Back in a moment.
Broadcasting from the Baker Implement Studios. Baker Implement, serving you with 11 convenient locations. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM Jonesboro.
do company command, I chose a different route and wanted to apply to become a military chaplain. But I had to come off active duty, so we moved to Arkansas. My in-laws live here in Conway. Moved here, was going to finish my seminary degree, which I did. But God had a different plan and was coming home from work in Little Rock one day and spoke to my heart to make a right on this street called Robbins. There's a trailer park back here, and the rest is history. So me, my wife, and our 3 kids, they were little at the time, we just did ministry every Sunday. The trailer park, pretty huge, low income, disabled persons. And we started serving the community and became a nonprofit, City of Hope Outreach. And we began doing work in 3 different communities here in Conway, and then started some work in southeast Arkansas in a city called Mitchellville outside of Dumas, and Eudora near Lake Village. And we focus strategically on education, housing, and community development. So we do after-school programs for kids. We have a home for men who are homeless. We're raising money for a housing project called Hope Village. We do some community development, a jobs program for foreign homeless guys and women, just a host of different things. And yeah, so I've been doing that for the last 12 years. Love it to death.
Wow.
Couldn't think of anything else I could do right now.
That is amazing. So you guys essentially, and that I love the story that you were driving and you felt that you needed to take a right on a certain street.
Yeah.
I just want to. I have to take this opportunity. That happens. I think that happens to me. That happens to a lot of people out there. Sometimes I ignore it. I just want to take the opportunity to say, don't ignore it when that happens.
Right. You're right. You are right.
So you go. So you make this. You make this right turn. You go, and you guys are meeting people's needs, forming relationships. And people are realizing, hey, here, that they are loved. And I guess I'm curious as like, what kind of results do you see from that? I mean, are people getting out of their situations?
Yeah. So one of the things I had to learn, and a lot of this is from my military experience, you got to be able to play the long game. Nothing happens overnight because an individual has a vote. They make choices as to how fast they want to move, what it is that they want to do to affect their situation. We're not coming in forcing anybody to do anything. We want to simply provide the resource, create a space for opportunity, give some wisdom, and then that individual or family has to, make those choices. And, like anybody else in life, people go through a decision-making process as to what resources they're going to access, what opportunities they're going to take and not take. So the success is really over time. I don't count nickels and noses. I count change over time. And because of that, we've had people who started out in very hard situations. They've been on our board. I have some that work in my organization now on my staff. I have others who, they've chosen to remain in the communities they live, but they help out other people, and they share resources or get people who are in need connected. And ultimately, I'm measuring success in how are people realizing that they can take whatever it is they have, whatever little they have or how much they have, and they can use it not only to impact their own life, but impact somebody else's. And that's really a beautiful thing for people to see that they have an opportunity to choose Paul, and not really measure it always on the amount of money they have, but really how they feel about themselves and how they can help other people. To answer your question.
We're talking with Dr. Philip Fletcher. He's going to be in Jonesboro tomorrow night at 6:30 at the First National Bank Community Room. It's this event, Quest for Quality of Life. He is, again, the founder and executive director of the City of Hope Outreach, which is a 501c3 nonprofit in Conway, Arkansas. And the mission, I want to read
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hi, Mike. It's definitely a starter kit meme. We're trying to narrow down the meme of the day. Joe's got some good possibilities that we're gonna throw up there here in a minute. But I saw one last night that was perfect, but I didn't send it. I don't know why. It was really funny. Yeah, that's a good one too, folks. Welcome back to the program. It's hour number 2. We appreciate you being with us. We can't do the show without you listening every single day. This is a big story right here about Pope County. Last night, the Pope County Quorum Court, Joe, tried to undo the ordinance. You know how they tried to do this 2 weeks ago? They didn't have enough votes. They didn't have enough people there. They failed to suspend the rules to even vote on this. They're all now claiming, and they've contradicted themselves many times, and they have an opinion of an attorney representing the county saying that the ordinance itself is against the law. It contradicts the now new Amendment 100 to the Arkansas Constitution. If the people cannot vote to have a vote, I mean, and that's what happened. They voted to have a vote, and now they want to go back against their word. And it's a shame. And you hide behind legalese, and you're hiding. That's what people do. They're doing exactly the political gamesmanship that you see in Little Rock at the county level. They're doing the political gamesmanship that you see in Washington, D.C. And essentially, your elected leaders in Pope County, from what I can tell, not all of them, but the ones who are trying to undo ordinances that have been laws that have been passed by the people to have a separate vote on whether or not they want a casino in their land, they are essentially governing with their eyes closed. Now, what does that mean? Well, you ever talk to a liberal and they talk with their eyes closed because they know so much? Ronald Reagan said the liberals know so much that isn't true. But it goes like this. It's slightly different. It's slightly different. But this is they do this in Little Rock all the time, and they don't actually close their eyes, but they might as well close their eyes. It's a very pretentious way to talk down to people, and it goes like this. It's like, you just don't understand the legal process that we're trying to institute. Yes, they passed the ordinance. Yes, we all are on record saying that we want the people to have a say. But things are different now, and you just don't know. You're not in my shoes. You just don't understand. Now, what I think is, see what I'm doing there? You close your eyes. Maybe it's because they don't want to look you in the face. I don't know. No, here's what I think happened. What I think happened is what happens to every politician that promises to govern a certain way, whether you're the county judge or whether you're a quorum court member. You tell the people when you're running one thing, and you get in the office, and things are somehow different. Now, why are things different? Well, I'll tell you why things are different. Because you're no longer running for office. So you're no longer talking to the people as much as you were. You're no longer promising them things that you will or won't do. Won't do is the operative word here. What I won't do is not respect the will of the people when it comes to a casino. That's what I won't do. But then you get in the office, and then everybody you meet, casino after casino, Cherokee Business Nation, the Gulfside casinos, are telling you to do the opposite of what you promised you would do. And you're human, and so you get worn down. And that's what we're seeing here. That's what I think we're seeing. And again, I don't live in Pope County, but it's a great place to live. And I'm glad that the motion to rescind the ordinance failed. A special meeting Monday night, the Pope County Quorum Court failed at an attempt to consider repealing a 2018 ordinance that requires county officials to get permission from voters before they endorse a candidate for a casino license. Now, this isn't just any old ordinance. This was an ordinance that was voted on by the people. And they said, and we're going to talk to Larry Walker on Thursday, by the way, about these new developments. They said, we want to have a say. We want to have a separate vote to decide to make sure we have a casino or not. Now, it is true that repealing the initiated ordinance would invalidate 2 lawsuits brought by the anti-casino group Citizens for a Better Pope County and save the county hundreds of thousands of dollars. This according to the County Judge Cross. This story in the Gazette, by the way, is by the Democrat Gazette by Jeannie Roberts. But they fell 1 vote shy of suspending the rules so that they consider the resolution. So they didn't get to do it. Now, the Citizens for a Better Pope County, they also have a suit against the Racing Commission, saying that the decision by Pope County in the first place to endorse the Cherokee Nation back on August 13th was in violation of, they need to have an ordinance before you do. You got to have a separate election or a separate vote before you can do that. Now, the people who are calling themselves Pope County Majority, which is really weird that they, if you have to say that you're the majority, you're probably not. If you have to say that you're the majority, when they just had a vote to have a vote, and you don't want that vote to happen. Now think about it. Pope County Majority, okay? Pope County Majority doesn't want the vote to happen. Yet they're calling themselves Pope County Majority. Why is that? If you're a member of Pope County Majority and you want a casino, good for you. I'm glad that you have an opinion, but shouldn't you want the vote? Shouldn't you want the vote to take place? So we could see if the name of your organization is accurate? I read this story this morning, and I got pretty upset because I just don't think, by hook or by crook, we've got ethics investigations about secret meetings that violate the Freedom of Information Act. You have lawsuits in the courts, and we had the Pope County Quorum Court yesterday trying to torpedo those lawsuits by undoing an ordinance that's the basis of the lawsuits. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, that sounds like a corrupt activity to me. I don't know about you. The people vote a certain way to have an election, and then the casinos come in with all of their money, and you have a select group of legislators now trying to undo what the people wanted because of money? What does that sound like to you? Well, there's no personal benefit. We're not being... Well, how do we know that? You're having secret meetings, and you're straw polling when you're not supposed to be. I mean, again, there's a significant force of people in Pope County that don't want this. There's opposition to it. And so it becomes a stereotypical event, occurrence, something that you would expect when a casino's moving into town where people don't want it to come in. You got to use the money. And so they have this attorney, the Quorum Court, using this attorney from Fort Smith by the name of Colby Rowe. This person is representing the Pope County in lawsuits. He told the justices of the peace yesterday that the ordinance is in direct contradiction of Constitutional Amendment 100, passed by state voters in November. Oh, it is? Fantastic. Then just let the judge rule on that. Let's see if the judge agrees, Colby Rowe, with your opinion. You're a lawyer. You have an opinion. Another lawyer has another opinion. But we can really easily test if Colby Rowe's opinion about the decision to have a vote before you can get a casino is contradicting Amendment 100 that everybody voted on. Pope County voted against, but the rest of the state decided to put that on them. let's just let the judge decide if you're so confident. I mean, if you're right, why not just let the courts decide? It's already in court. It's being adjudicated right now. This is what he said. It is my ethical obligation to render you candid legal advice, adding that the ordinance should be repealed because it is unconstitutional and invalid. Well, okay. Well, I don't know. When is the last time? I really don't know. I would be curious to know. When's the last time a legislative body undid one of its laws because some lawyer said it was unconstitutional? Normally, once a law is passed, you let the courts decide. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know of any instance when, in recent memory, when a legislative body, you've already had an ordinance, you've had the vote, it's now the statute. I don't know of any ordinance when the legislative body comes back and says, oh, whoa, we messed up, this is unconstitutional, we need to repeal it. Pretty sure if it's a big enough deal, somebody's already filed a lawsuit, and then they go ahead and let the courts decide. But see, here's the thing. It's not in the courts because it's in the courts because you ignored the ordinance in the first place. That's why it's in the courts. You went ahead and recommended to the Racing Commission a casino before you had an election like you were supposed to. Fascinating. He also said this. By not repealing it, Rose said, the county is left open to even more litigation if the initiated ordinance is left in place and the quorum court decides to call an election to put the license endorsement question before voters. Now, hang on a second. I don't think the quorum court's going to decide to call an election. I think they may be forced to by a judge. Well, that would be different then, wouldn't it? And then Rose said that you might also be hit with an illegal exaction contest. You're in a bad situation. An illegal exaction meaning somebody sues because of the money you would spend on the election, I guess. Because you would then claim that it's in contradiction to Amendment 100, which also doesn't make sense because the judges or the judge in the lawsuits, they're going to decide whether or not the ordinance is in contradiction to Amendment 100. They're going to decide it. Why not let the courts decide? The only way the quorum court, this is ridiculous. They want to repeal the ordinance because they are afraid the courts are going to rule against them. And that means that you don't get the casino. Pope County majority. Where Pope County majority? I don't. When does that ever happen? When does an organization claim to be the majority but doesn't want a democratic election? Pope County majority. But we don't want to vote to actually see if we're the majority. Ooh, no. You understand how ridiculous that is? It's like the antithesis to a democratic election. It's like, well, I know you're calling yourself the majority, but we could actually test and see if that theory is true or not. And all you got to do is have an election. And here's the thing. As of right now, we know that Pope County majority is not the majority. Because when they voted on Amendment 100, there was a sizable majority of people that voted against Amendment 100, which was the casino law in the first place. So you're actually not the majority. It's laughable. Last night, the halls of the Pope County Courthouse were filled to capacity, and people went back and forth. Do we have a quote here from somebody? You see here. For or against. Here we go. Several audience members in T-shirts with the pro-casino group Pope County Majority logo and holding red signs declaring repeal it told the quorum court members that the opposition was trying to force the financially strapped county to spend money to defend an ordinance that is null and void. Well, it's okay. I mean, they could spend the money now because if you get what you want, you'll get a bunch of casino money. And it's again, the county will be fine here if you get what you want. I think you're just afraid you're not going to get what you want, though. A guy by the name of David Henderson, who I don't know, he said, quote, "This ordinance is a stain on our county." Well, I mean, so you're saying that the people are a stain, then? The ordinance is a stain on the county. Well, the people voted for the ordinance. The people voted to have a separate say. The people voted themselves a check and balance on their government in case what might happen, which is exactly what's happening now, which is they voted people in office who have now been swayed. It's a very, if you got a quorum court versus the rest of the people, it's a smaller group to lobby. And what would you know? The casinos have been very successful about lobbying a smaller group of elected officials. I want you to think about that. This ordinance isn't a stain on the county. This ordinance was drafted and voted on by the people as a check against what they thought was about to happen, which was, we're against this because it was sold as like, well, your county officials are going to have to recommend it. So as long as your county officials don't recommend anything, you're good. County officials, but then your county officials have caved and they want it now. So, So they put in this ordinance saying, well, we have to have a separate vote before you can do that as a check on power. Make sure it's good with the majority of Pope County before you go through with this. We'd like to have a separate vote. I honestly can't believe we're even talking like this. I mean, come on. This is I mean, local governments are supposed to be, I mean, definitely much more accountable, local governments to the local level, because they represent fewer people, and I can't believe they're just being so blatant. And it really shows you what money will do to people, what the potential for money will do to people, what the potential for government revenue will do to people. This is greed. This is greed, not from a personal standpoint, but from a government standpoint. This is saying, it's going to be worth it. The vice, the potential negatives, but we're going to get all this money. The county's going to get all this money. So it's worth it. It's worth it to ignore the potential bad that we know happens in other communities with casinos, because we're going to get the money. Very similar to what many people or some people at the top of Arkansas's economic development heap are doing with China. They're promising us jobs someday here, and so we'll ignore their human rights abuses. We'll ignore the threat that they pose to the country. We'll ignore an Arkansas congressman who sits on the House Permanent Select Intelligence Committee. We'll ignore his warnings because they might give us jobs sometime in the next 100 years. It's the same principle. You're sacrificing your principles for money, whether personal, which we don't know, but certainly from a government standpoint. Oh, the things your government will do in your name without your approval. We'll add this one to that long, long list. Back in 1 minute.
Simply provide the resource, create a space for opportunity, give some wisdom, and then that individual or family has to, make those choices. And, like anybody else in life, people go through a decision-making process as to what resources they're going to access, what opportunities they're going to take and not take. So the success is really over time. I don't count nickels and noses. I count change over time. And because of that, we've had people who started out in very hard situations. They've been on our board. I have some that work in my organization now on my staff. I have others who, they've chosen to remain in the communities they live, but they help out other people, and they share resources or get people who are in need connected. And ultimately, I'm measuring success.
bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Yes. Speaking of your government doing things in your name that you don't approve of, that happens a lot. As I said, it's a long list. So, what do you do as a taxpayer? Well, one thing you can do is give a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce to support, to support people who are standing up for your values. The government takes your money and it spends and spends and spends and grows and grows. You could actually give the government less money and give more money to the people who are fighting for you, right? They very rarely give us a break. And even when they give us a tax cut, they'll raise taxes over here, and it'll end up being a net tax increase. So I want you to go to conduitforcommerce.org, and I'd like you to click on the button, support our cause. And you can give us one-time donation. You could give a monthly donation if you'd like. And, your money is going to defend economic freedom, small business, less regulations, less taxes. Does it grow government? Does it increase dependency on government? Does it spend money we don't have? That is what your money is going to. So, if you agree with what we're talking about here today on the program, go to conduitforcommerce.org, put Arkansas small business first, and click support our cause. Do that right now. Again, conduitforcommerce.org. Speaking of taxes, there's a group who's upset with income inequality. Talk Business and Politics. Steve Bronner writing that a group is pushing combined reporting when it comes to corporate taxes for tax fairness. Now, Governor Asa Hutchinson disagrees with this, but there was a report that came out that said that Arkansas should adopt something called combined corporate income tax reporting. Now, this is in the wake of legislation that passed this year that raised your internet taxes, but also cut corporate taxes to benefit wealthy individuals. They got to throw that little line in there. Isn't that funny? By the way, I'm going to be in Stuttgart tonight. I'm excited to be there. I'm going to be there to talk about this very issue, by the way. Going to be at... Hang on one second. I'm going to tell you. Hang on a second. I just had this. Yeah, here we go. Arkansas County Open Season Grill. Okay, so I'll be at the Open Season Grill at 6:30 tonight in Stuttgart. And going to be going over what happened in the legislative session. So please come out, and I'd love to meet you guys. I'd love to talk. How many of you out there own a Chapter C corporation? Not many, right? How many out there pay and buy your products on the internet? Most all of us, or all of us. So you square that away. They took one piece of legislation and they lowered the corporate income tax, which I'm fine with. Well, eventually. It hasn't happened yet, but eventually. Sometime in the future, they'll lower it. They raised your taxes on the internet July 1st. So there's a little bit of incongruity there. I think there's a lack of perspective there when they were crafting this legislation because it really wasn't about the corporate tax reform as much as it was about raising revenue from us. But this leftist group called Arkansas Advocates for Children and Families, a very progressive tax group, they're upset with the corporate income tax, and they believe that the corporate income tax cut or the corporate tax cut, they believe that you should have to combine your corporate income tax across states. So if you've got one entity in Arkansas and a bunch of other entities elsewhere, you should have to pay based on, which is crazy. I mean, that makes no sense at all because they're upset that states will shift and do things with their books depending on you have a location here or a location in another state. That's what they're saying. But the governor came out with an interesting quote about this report they were citing. Quote, "The report makes the case that the state can collect more in tax revenue by the combined income approach. Collecting more in tax revenue," he says, "is not the objective. Our goal is to have a competitive and fair tax code. The internet sales tax exemption was closed." Folks, this is your carefully crafted language of the day because we're facing a net tax increase.
invest in how are people realizing that they can take whatever it is they have, whatever little they have or how much they have, and they can use it not only to impact their own life, but impact somebody else's. And that's really a beautiful thing for people to see that they have an opportunity to choose Paul and not really measure it always on the amount of money they have, but really how they feel about themselves and how they can help other people. To answer your question.
We're talking with Dr. Philip Fletcher. He's going to be in Jonesboro tomorrow night, 6:30 at the First National Bank Community Room. It's this event, Quest for Quality of Life. He is, again, the founder and executive director of the City of Hope Outreach, which is a 501c3 nonprofit in Conway, Arkansas. And the mission, I want to read the full mission statement here. The mission of COHO is to provoke hope in individuals, families, and communities for the glory of God. And so I gotta ask this next question. Poverty is not necessarily just a material thing, a lack of material thing. You know, a lot of times it's the relationships and that are decaying around them and that sort of thing. And so I'm curious, there's got to be an immense amount of opportunities to share the gospel with people, and how that the reconciliation with God also allows you to reconcile with your fellow man, right?
That's correct. That is correct. So it is a thing you run in the tension of, sharing the word, but also carrying out some type of deed, some type of action. And so how do you love persons in word and deed? And it can go either direction. You can begin with the word and move toward a deed, or you can begin with a deed and move toward the word. And so, each situation is very unique and complex, again, because each person is coming with a different set of needs and a different set of circumstances. So it's important to be discerning about that situation. And so we're very cognizant of that fact, of figuring out, okay, which way do we need to start? Like our guys at our Hope Homes, one of their things they have to sit through is they go through a Bible study on Wednesday as part of their program that they participate in. But then also they partake in actually carrying out deeds to help the community. They put on
Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
So we have this story here. Caleb Park at Fox News wrote about what happened last week. So last week, federal court struck down Obama administration's transgender mandate for doctors. Okay, this was in Texas. Federal court in Texas ruled that doctors across the nation are not required to perform gender transition surgeries if they go against their medical judgment or religious beliefs. I thought we should talk to Luke McCoy about this. Luke is with the Family Council here in Arkansas. You can find out more at familycouncil.org. Luke, how are you this morning?
Doing great, Paul. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you could make it. So what do you think? What are your thoughts on this idea? What we're really talking about is conscience, right?
Correct. So transgenderism, what to do about it? That's what probably a lot of people are wondering, some of your listeners, a lot of folks on the conservative aisle of politics. And that's, of course, what we're thinking about at Family Council, too, what to do about it. And I'll get to that briefly, and I think protecting conscience and promoting it, obviously, is one of the biggest keys. But I don't know if your listeners caught, but yesterday, actually it was 2 days ago, it was actually last Saturday, over the weekend in England, a trans female cyclist won a national cycling tournament, whatever you want to call it, and smashed a woman's world record over there. Of course, this athlete took the first place prize. And so, obviously, it's a biological male. He's a philosophy professor of all sorts that was competing against a whole bunch of other women, beat them all handedly. I think the second place finisher was some ways back in the race. But what this athlete had the audacity to say was that because she's a trans female, if she were removed from the sport, it would be unfair. And, of course, a lot of us listening today and on the conservative side of the aisle, maybe even some common sense folks in the middle, would say, no, what's unfair is you're competing against a whole bunch of women, basically, as a man, in a sport where most men would have an advantage over women. So, there's other situations like this that have occurred. I'm sure a lot of your listeners have heard. Just to name a few, or a couple, there's one that wasn't even on my radar. I didn't even know about this, but it happened several years ago. An MMA fighter, trans female MMA fighter, a biological man, in other words, fought another female opponent and fractured her skull and won via TKO in the first round. So it's just crazy. You've got folks like Alliance Defending Freedom that are representing some female track athletes up in the Connecticut area. Obviously, a man, young man who identifies as a female, wanted to compete, obviously won, and took spots away from other deserving female track athletes at the state championship. So there's more and more of that. But we live in a free country. People want to identify as a female when they're male, or identify as a male when they're female. They can do that. So I think a lot of folks on the right, conservative folks, are probably scratching their heads. What do we do about this? And here's the basic answer. We protect people who don't conform to those ideas. And the way we do that is we strengthen rights of conscience. Now, a lot of your listeners may not know, but the state constitution of Arkansas has some pretty strong language concerning the right of conscience. In fact, it says something to the effect of no human authority in any case whatsoever can interfere with the rights of conscience. And so that's great that we have that in our own state constitution. Family Council for several years now has been working to strengthen rights of conscience in our state legislature. Unfortunately, it's kind of a tough issue to understand, but it's also a tough issue politically. So we've been hitting some roadblocks and so forth, and we're interested to see it advance. It's actually one of our highest legislative priorities coming into the 2021 session.
I think it's a great priority to have. I think it would make Arkansas even more pro-life than we are. And I think at this point it's common sense. This is not an issue that's going to go away. It's actually here. As a matter of fact, I wish we would have already addressed this issue. Back to your point about, let's start with the cyclist. Okay. Mm-hmm. I understand that the left talks about equality, and I think I'm all for equality between men and women under the law. But that does not, when it comes to rights and everything else. But that does not mean that we participate in other people's delusions, and it doesn't mean that we don't acknowledge that we are all born into this world with different talents and different realities. And the fact is that cyclist, according to the report that the biological male cyclist that beat all of those women cyclists, I understand he didn't even qualify for the men's cycling. He wouldn't have qualified. Yeah. And so
I honestly, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead, Luke. Go ahead.
I honestly wondered if he just couldn't compete with the men because, look, I don't know about you, Paul. In some of my other dealings in life, I've had to deal with cyclists, and they are a very passionate group of folks who love their sport. And I kind of wonder, honestly, this guy didn't do so well in the men's, but wanted to compete for the gold and so on and so forth, and decided, you know what, I love cycling so much, I'm going to change my gender to be able to compete.
It's possible.
That's kind of what was going through my mind. You know what she also said? I say she, excuse me. He also said that if he were removed from that sport, it'd be like removing black women from female sports, basically equating that this was equal to a racial inequality. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy, and it also, I mean, think about if you're a young girl, okay, and you're training to be a cyclist or whatever. I mean, throw that off the window. That all of a sudden doesn't matter anymore. I mean, because and that's what's so frustrating. Back to Fallon Fox. She was the MMA fighter you're referring to, and I think the UFC's good. I believe the UFC is not going to allow this to happen anymore because it's going to result in the death of one of their female fighters if they continue to let this happen. I know it's controversial, but the fact that we have women's sports and men's sports in the first place, if you follow the transgender logic, and eventually you're going to have to get rid of those because the fact that you have the WNBA versus the NBA would suggest that we know that there is a vast athletic benefit or advantage that men have from women, and it just has to do with the fact that we've got way more testosterone, we've got better bone density, we have more muscle mass, and I mean, that is the biological truth. And back to your point about what do we do with it, Luke, I don't know because, there was all of those people back in, when I was in college or back in the 90s or even before that said that, the breakdown of the American family and the government legitimizing non-traditional lifestyles was a slippery slope. And I honestly don't even think if you were to go back during the Obama administration when the Supreme Court legalized gay marriage or said gay marriage is a right in the Constitution when it's not, I don't even think people would believe where we are today, where now we have this idea where they're, almost compelling speech with pronouns. They're trying to let men compete against women in sports. It really is getting unrecognizable at this point. And so I'm not sure what the solution is, but I do know here in the state, we should be passing laws to try to address this before it gets worse.
Yes, so what we've got to do is Family Council specifically worked on a bill that goes by the moniker Healthcare Rights of Conscience or Medical Rights of Conscience, Medical Freedom of Conscience, something along those lines. But basically that would bring everyone else in the healthcare industry up to the same level of conscience protection that doctors and hospitals currently enjoy. Because right now, and we're talking about elective procedures, Paul. We're not talking about diabetes medication. We're not talking about necessary surgeries, okay? We're talking about elective procedures, and that's what a sex reassignment surgery is. Okay, now there may be those very small percentage of folks who have ambiguous genitalia, in other words, and things like that. And so, yes, some of those surgeries are necessary for those folks, but basically your DNA is true. But nonetheless, doctors and hospitals can refuse elective procedures if they feel it's not professional, if they have safety concerns or whatever it is. They can say, no, we're not going to participate in that medical procedure here. So what we're trying to do is bring nurses, pharmacists, counselors, okay, all these other folks in the healthcare industry up to the same level of protection. We also have ideas to protect counselors that aren't necessarily in the healthcare field or those that are not necessarily in a medical setting. Those also in careers that we've heard about university professors and educators and so on that are getting sued for not using the correct pronoun. I heard about another case just a couple days ago. I think a college professor was fired after disagreeing with the university policy of addressing a person by their preferred pronoun. Things like that. We've got to protect people. We've got to protect conscience. It's a hugely important issue that goes all the way back to the Founding Fathers. It's amazing to read what they said about conscience. In fact, the word right of conscience almost got into the First Amendment, I believe, by James Madison. I don't have the exact language in front of me, but nonetheless, I think a lot of people don't know about the right of conscience, but basically, if you don't have the right of conscience, what rights do you have?
Yeah.
If you don't have the right to freely think what you believe to be true or false, so on, what rights do you really have?
Yeah. That's a really good point. We're talking with Luke McCoy. He's from Family Council, familycouncil.org. It's an Arkansas-based organization. You need to check him out. Luke, you mentioned that this conscious protection law would kind of envelop more of the professional class, medical class. You mentioned counselors or therapists. I mean, that is an issue too, right? Because there are some restrictions in other states going on where you cannot, if somebody comes to you transgender, you cannot in any way counsel them that is a delusion or a psychological problem, that you have to affirm it. And that is, again, I mean, so would this law address that?
If it's a medical setting, yes.
Okay.
It would. Assuming it doesn't specifically exempt it. But you got states like California, they've passed such broad SOGI laws, sexual orientation, gender identity, for those who may not be familiar with that acronym. They've passed such broad SOGI laws, it includes transgendered people, in other words. And so if you, quote-unquote, discriminate against them, you got the heavy hand of the law against you.
Yeah.
It's scary stuff.
Okay, so here's another story, and I want to get your thoughts on this. This was came out today. It's up at the Daily Wire. There's a jury in Texas that has ruled against a dad fighting against his 7-year-old son's gender transition. So they got divorced. The ex-wife married a woman, I believe, who is a doctor, and they want to give this guy puberty blockers. Now, so the court ruled against him getting sole custody. And he was quoted as saying this. This was in a podcast that he said at the Luke Macias podcast. I want you to imagine having electronic communication with your son on FaceTime. And imagine that your ex-wife has dressed him up as a drag queen to talk to you. He has false eyelashes and makeup. His hair has gotten glitter in it. He's wearing a dress. Now, 7-year-old kid, even without the hormone blockers, not being administered to the child yet, but they're saying that they're going to do it when he's 11, or they might do it. Just doing that to the child, I think, is a form of sexual abuse, Luke. And, so what are we supposed to do? This is happening in Texas, where a jury decided to not give this father sole custody.
I really hope, I'm vaguely familiar with the story. In fact, I read yesterday that the thing that tipped the mother off was that the boy wanted a girl's McDonald's toy. And that's what started all this. Now, there's a lot more to this story than we can discuss here, but I hope there were other things that the father did to not gain custody.
I hope so, too.
I so hope that's the case.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, yes, Family Council and our team and our other allies across the nation, like Alliance Defending Breeding, Liberty Council, and others, we've talked about, okay, this should be off limits for minors, unless maybe they're emancipated from their parents. But really, I would hope doctors and physicians would say, you know what, and I know I'm being a little optimistic here, but doctors should not be performing those type of elective surgeries on minors, period. Yeah. They shouldn't. So be looking out for some things. I know David on our staff and Jerry are more involved in that specific realm. Yeah. I've been more involved in the conscience protection generic realm. So be looking out for some things from us that would help address that, at least here in Arkansas. And hopefully that would catch on and survive legal challenges and also be introduced in other states.
Yeah. I hope you're right. And this is an example of where we have to be left of bang. Just because there there might not be a slew of incidents here in Arkansas, we see the writing on the wall, the handwriting on the wall. So let's be left of bang. Let's not wait for the bang to happen and then be right of it. Let's be left of it. I know you guys at Family Council are working on that. I thank you guys for that, Luke, and I appreciate you coming on the show this morning.
Yeah, thank you, Paul.
All right,
appreciate it.
Luke McCoy, everybody. FamilyCouncil.org. Check them out. We're going to take a break. Going to wrap up. Be back here with your meme of the day.
And how are people realizing that they can take whatever it is they have whatever little they have or how much they have, and they can use it not only to impact their own life, but impact somebody else's. And that's really a beautiful thing for people to see that they have an opportunity to choose Paul, and not really measure it always on the amount of money they have, but really how they feel about themselves and how they can help other people. To answer your question.
We're talking with Dr. Philip Fletcher. He's going to be in Jonesboro tomorrow night, 6:30 at the First National Bank Community Room. It's this event, Quest for Quality of Life. He is, again, the founder and executive director of the City of Hope Outreach, which is a 501c3 nonprofit in Conway, Arkansas. And the mission, I want to read the full mission statement here. The mission of COHO is to provoke hope in individuals, families, and communities for the glory of God. And so I gotta ask this next question. Poverty is not necessarily just a material thing, a lack of material thing. You know, a lot of times it's the relationships and that are decaying around them and that sort of thing. And so I'm curious. There's got to be an immense amount of opportunities to share the gospel with people. And how the reconciliation with God also allows you to reconcile with your fellow man, right?
That's correct. That is correct. So it is a thing you run in the tension of, sharing the word, but also carrying out.
Who's next to Zipline?
Me, and I'm really excited about this.
Sir, I'm sorry. The zip line has a 350-pound weight limit, and frankly, I do not think it would be safe for you.
Oh, that's okay. I self-identify as 180 pounds, so it's cool.
Sir, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm afraid we can't let you ride the zip line. You're too heavy. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I thought we had evolved as a society. I thought this was America, but I guess this is just my plight. First slavery, and now fat shaming.
Sir, again, I'm really sorry.
You listen to me. If you don't let me ride, not only will I sue this company for discrimination, I will sue you for damages because right now my feelings are so hurt and I feel embarrassed because I'm holding up the line.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Watch it, mister.
Look, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't think it would be safe for you.
You don't understand. I self-identify as skinny. So you have to let me ride the zip line. The Constitution says so. I get to define my own reality.
Okay, fine, whatever. Ride the zip line. Mike, let this man ride the zip line.
Thank you. Now watch as my self-identity trumps your bigotry. See you on the other side, racist. Here I go! Doctor, thank goodness. What's the prognosis?
Sir, we've done everything we can, and you only have seconds to live.
No, you cannot say that. I do not self-identify as a dead person.
PHP Parody.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Just for the record on that story about the transgender kid, the mother has accused the father of child abuse in their divorce proceedings, quote, for not affirming James as a transgender. So, I mean, there may be more, that he's done, but that's one of the grievances. It's absolutely ridiculous. No, I haven't heard about that story. Anyway, so we'll keep following this story. This is nuts. That this is happening in Texas of all places. If it will happen there, I mean, who knows? And it really comes to this idea of people not wanting. I think people don't want to be called bigots. They don't want to be. If you say that you're discriminating against somebody, that's like I think in our society, that's like the worst thing you can be accused of today.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, but we're not talking about discriminating. We're talking about calling calling a spade, and we're not going to let the crowd that claims they're pro-science when it comes to global warming, even though their science is flawed, deny the science of biological men and women and claim that hardware is software and software is hardware. Go ahead.
So during my meme searches, I get inundated with a lot of different information.
Yeah, he does. Some of them a lot of them we can't use.
So some memes are really good, but it's just sometimes they're just straight information, not a meme. So the global warming thing you were bringing up, there's actually statistics that I saw. It was using the glacial ice compact in Greenland in measuring it and like how it's formed and stuff like that, and using the science behind whatever the science is, I don't know how it works, to test when like global warming and cooling periods on the Earth happened. There were 3 in the last 10,000 years, according to the science. There were 3 hard like warming periods that were way, way, way worse in terms of temperature than what we're experiencing now as quote unquote global warming.
Yeah.
So on what I want to talk about.
That's not what you wanted to talk about? Okay, well, we got like a minute. We got to get
There was a transgender elementary school student at what was called the Quality Presidential Town Hall, and asked Elizabeth Warren during her time, within her first week of office, the student asked, what are you going to do for transgender students I'm trying to remember the exact phrasing of the question. Essentially, to stop bullying of transgender students so that they can focus on just doing schoolwork.
Yeah.
And instead of being focused on being bullied. That was what the question was. And her response was, "That's such a great question. I love that question. It's one of my favorite questions." I was like,
well, that's now the favorite.
I cringed so hard because when this elementary school student said that they were a transgender, I went.
You know what I want to say? When they bring up bullying at all, I really wish we could just kind of condense it and like, hey, how do you plan to stop disagreements forever? Because that's, you know what I mean? Like, it's so ridiculous. We're walking up, we're what is it called? We're urinating in the wind. You know, it doesn't make any sense. Oh, by the way, speaking of quality, you mentioned quality. Dan Sullivan's Quality of Life event with a rock star panel is tonight at First National Bank Community Room at 6:30 in Jonesboro. I'm going to be in Arkansas County, speaking to the Arkansas County Republicans tonight at 6:30. I'll be in Stuttgart at the Open Season Grill. So please make sure that you attend if you're listening in Stuttgart. We appreciate you. And I'll see you tonight at 6:30. Here's your meme of the day. It's from Magaphone M.A.G.A.phone. This is the Leftist Worldview Starter Pack. So this is what you need. If you want to be a leftist, this is your starter pack. You need 4 things, okay? First of all, white supremacist. Yeah, I know. First of all, you need a photo of 2 black people with the Trump supporters who are black. Well, they're obviously white supremacists. Then you have white supporters who are Jews for Trump, and you need to call them Nazis, right? The Jews for Trump are clearly Nazis in your leftist starter cap. Then you have a photo of a man dressed like a woman. That's clearly a woman. And then a photo of CNN, which is news. So that's your leftist worldview starter pack. If you believe that black Trump supporters are white supremacists and Jews for Trump are Nazis and men who are dressing up like women are in fact women, and if you believe that CNN is news, then you are a leftist. We'll see you tomorrow. Arkansas, be safe.